Welcome back to the podcast. Before I tell you about this week's guest, I want to remind you all that I will be launching my brand new membership, the Fix Your Period Collective, a first of its kind membership platform that will give you personalized information about your menstrual cycle displayed in a dashboard format once you take my detailed period quiz. Inside the membership, you're going to find my period pillars, which is my step-by-step signature program, dozens of condition-specific period protocols for everything from heavy periods to painful periods, a recipe room, community, supplement shop, all my blog posts and podcasts organized by category, and a product shop with every period product imaginable. This membership has been nearly 2 years in the making and has been a true labor of love for me and my team. I absolutely cannot wait for you to take the period quiz and take advantage of everything this platform has to offer. So stay tuned because I will be sharing much more as we get close to the launch date in May. Today, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Stasha Washburn, also known as the Period Coach. As the founder of Period Coaching School and the author of The Revolution Will Be Bloody and Bloody Brilliant Business, Stasha is leading a revolution to end the taboo around menstruation. In our conversation, we delve into Stasha's passion for reconnecting individuals with the power of their cycles, the critical role of period coaches in filling the gaps in menstrual care, how we align our work and productivity with our menstrual cycles, and Stasha's upcoming book, Bloody Brilliant Business, which promises to transform the way we approach business and entrepreneurship. Get ready for an empowering and insightful discussion that challenges the status quo and celebrates the innate wisdom of our bodies. Thank you so much for being here, as always, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on this episode. Hi, Stasha. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so looking forward to this.
Yes, I know. I have been looking forward to this conversation for ages. And when you talked about the fact that you're writing a book on cycles and business and work, I was like, yes, this is going to be the conversation for today. So excited for that. So why don't we start with a little bit of background on you? Maybe you can tell my listeners what led you to do this work in the world, because as you and I both know, we always have some kind of like a long story about our health and how it got us into this work.
Too long, but yes. Oh my God, for sure. So endometriosis, that's like the one word answer. I was one of those people who had bad periods right out of the gate, and not like bad periods, like crippling, passing out in the middle of English class in high school, passing out in front of my locker, like really not good periods. And the doctor that I had, I don't want to poo-poo because she did try very hard and she did everything. But at the time, her knowledge was that you can't have endometriosis as a young person. It takes years to accumulate and develop and cause pain. So they basically chalked it up to, I don't know. And she put me on all of the birth controls, even the weird experimental ones that got pulled off the market later. Like, I'm just lucky to be here today. All of the narcotics, like we graduated from, prescription ibuprofen to baby narcotics to intense narcotics. And I'm thankful I'm not an addictive personality, or this would be a different podcast I'm on right now.
Seriously.
So I was on all of the drugs and nothing made a dent. In fact, I distinctly remember laying on my couch watching like the old 90s Batman cartoon in pain on drugs, going, Batman being quite so colorful. Like, obviously the narcotics were a little fun, but also a little off-putting. So it was just a really weird time. And, it's America. So eventually I didn't have my parents' health insurance anymore. And I just I stopped everything and realized that none of them made a difference anyway. So that was when I started looking into alternative options. I looked into Chinese medicine, herbology, Ayurveda. I was very good at helping all of my friends with all of their period problems, but I couldn't quite figure out the endometriosis problems. Also, I didn't think it was endometriosis because I was told it wasn't. And then over the years, I decided I needed to figure out a way to work with my body. So I had been in dance companies since I was 3 years old. I graduated with a dance degree in English literature and secondary education, and taught ballet and Pilates and yoga and bartended, all of these very physically demanding jobs. And eventually was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I am in pain, and I need a way to make money and keep a roof over my head that doesn't equal going into an office, having to work during my endo time, and being able to have a little bit more of a control over my schedule. So that's actually where, you and my story overlap, where we went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, became a health coach, thought, oh, great, I'll just be able to work from bed. So that'll be nice because then I can, have my endometriosis week, but at least I'll be in bed. Or I don't have to see clients at the very least. So that was sort of the plan. Of course, I worked with athletes because I had been an athlete my whole life. Of course, they all had period problems, and I solved their period problems. And it was fun for me. And I found so much more satisfaction when they would come to me saying, I had a great period this month, than when they came to me and said, I shaved a minute off of my marathon time or whatever it was that they were training for, right? So I would be like, yay, you shaved a minute off, but oh my God, tell me everything about the period stuff. So that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I really need to just go with the period stuff. So I started off doing just hormonal balance. Was the, I was like, oh, I'm just a hormonal balance coach, helping people have more hormonally balanced, happy periods and cycles. And that sort of morphed into all of my period coaching clients then had businesses. So then I was like, okay, well, let's talk about syncing your business and your cycle, because I have to. And this is what I've learned to do so that I could run my business with endometriosis. And they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's working so well. And so then their businesses were flourishing and their relationships are flourishing. I'm getting these emails that are like, oh my God, thought I was getting divorced, but now my husband and I are in the best place ever. Or like, I was on the, I had such bad PMDD that my business was failing and I was in the middle of suicidal ideation. And now I'm traveling with my husband and my business is amazing. And I was just like, okay, so this is where I'm really killing it, is just out here helping these women with their periods and their businesses get everything synced and balancing their business and their hormones. And it was an absolute thrill for me, which eventually segued into, I need to start period coaching school so that more people can learn how to do this stuff, so that more people can go out there and help other people, because I, as one person, cannot do it all. So like, let me train other people to build their businesses and get out there and do some kind of menstrual cycle coaching as well. And that's sort of where we are today.
It's like I said, right? It's quite a journey that we all go through. And, similarly to you, I felt the same way too. I wanted to train other people as well. And because how can we possibly meet the demand and the need? There's just so much, right? It's really quite unbelievable. And also really remarkable to see how much has shifted in the last 10 to 15 years. Aren't you blown away by that
I
in
love
our
it. I think
world?
it's amazing. I mean, I love and I'm sure you see this too. Like, I have students that have done your program and have done somatic training programs and have done like Lisa's charting fertility awareness program. And I'm like, rack them up, ladies. I love it. So it's just like, when I started, there was nothing. There were no like women's health certification programs. They just didn't exist. And being
Exactly.
able to see like all of these different options now coming up, and people going into, like, oh, I'm going to do this, and just learning. And frankly, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of interested in herbs. So now I'm on the lookout for like a women's herb course because I want to learn something new.
Aviva Rom's program is supposed to be amazing. Yeah.
I heard good things about that. That's going to be the one I look up next.
Yes. There you go. I know, right? I agree with you completely. It is so cool to see how much this has just blown up over the last decade. And I'm very excited by it. And I actually wanted to expand a little bit on what you were talking about, because you have your period coaching school. Can you talk a little bit about what a period coach is and how they can help someone, and also how they're filling those gaps in menstrual care that currently exist?
Oh my God, huge, right? So I often tell people we're the gap between your doctor and your prescription for birth control or surgery.
Oh,
Like,
that's so
for
good.
all of the other options that are out there, and there are a lot. So I like saying, we fill the gap between that and, surgery or those other very intensive therapies that doctors are what they know and prescribe, because they just don't know any better. But yeah, I think of period coaching as health coaching, right? Like health coaching, you can be a thyroid coach or diabetes or food or mood, like there's all those things. Menstrual cycle coaching, puberty, perimenopause, fertility, all the things that go wrong, PCOS, endometriosis, you name it, heavy bleeds, all of the things that can go wrong in those years in between. And then, of course, everything that goes along with it. Is your physical trainer menstrually informed? Because you probably should not be doing certain things in certain phases of your cycle if you're really trying to optimize your physical fitness, right? The women's soccer team, when they won the World Cup, cited their menstrual cycle training as the reason they had a leg up on the other teams around the world, because they were the only ones doing the menstrual cycle training, right? So like everything can be connected to your menstrual cycle. How are you working? How are you arranging your play dates for your kids? What are you eating? What are the smells around you? What are the sights, the sounds? Like, so I call it, the sensual system, all of these different senses and spirit, meditation, everything, and how they can be done with your cycle, so that not only are you supporting your hormones in that work, but also your work is supporting your hormones right back. So when I talk period coaching, it's an endless, infinite resource, right? You could be a trauma-informed endometriosis coach. You could be a diabetes and PCOS coach. You could be a business coach who works specifically with people with PCOS, right? There could be all sorts of amazing different combinations and niches and ways to go out there. So it really is one of those industries where if you want to help, you can. And that to me is like the thing that lights me up the most. Is I love hearing students go like, oh, I'm a yoga teacher, but I feel like my women aren't getting quite what they need. And I want to learn all about the menstrual cycles. Then I can really work with them. It just, to me, that's the light up of the life, is like doing something of service, making the world a better place. Caveat, making good money doing it.
Yes.
Right? Like I want money in the hands of women, minorities, people who are not typically given the high pay job, the raise, they have to go in and fight for the extra 50 cents an hour or whatever. This is an opportunity for people who normally can't get those good paying jobs, or would have to work 20 times hard and be 50 times better than any man in that position to just hold the same position, blah, 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 blah. An opportunity to make really good money doing something that they really love, that's soul satisfying and is helping other people. That to me is like the perfect Venn diagram of like idealized life.
It totally is. And also giving women the opportunity to start their own businesses, which, as we know, traditionally, it's like what you said, they're in the minority with regard to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some crazy stats about US business ownership in the US. I think it's like 70 or 80% of women owned businesses never make more than 100,000 in a year, type of thing. It's unbelievable when you really look at the numbers and break those down. And speaking of business, I really wanted to dedicate our conversation to this, right? Because on the podcast, we talked so much about syncing your exercise and your life with your menstrual cycle all over these last few years. And yet we haven't really talked so much about work and business. And I feel like your book, Bloody Brilliant Business, I believe that's what it's called. I'm really excited for this one because I think that we just want to get into all of that. And so I think that, the first thing I really want to talk about is how our current society, I know you're going to go on and on about this one, how we do business in the modern world and how it's just not conducive to those of us with menstrual cycles. Can you speak to that a little bit
Oh my God.
or a
Yeah. Right.
lot?
So right out of the gate, we're talking like 80 to 90% of people have menstrual cycle issues, right? Some sort of hormonal imbalance in their life. And that's going to show up in work because you can't take a day off. You can't have, mental health days are few and far between for most people who work. So it's tough to be in a system that's set up for men with the 24-hour androgen cycle, where you go in and you do the same things every day at the same time. So you go in and, you have your 8 a.m. meeting, your 9 a.m. social media, your 11 a.m. meeting, your lunch break, right? So it's very set up for how a cis man lives and works, and it's really ideally suited to them. So then having those like daily goals and agendas and these kinds of things work great for that. But for somebody who has a menstrual cycle, we're talking a 28-ish day cycle, not a 24-hour cycle. So a lot of times, the first thing is adjusting how we look at things from going, okay, this is every day to this is every month. So how can I take those daily tasks and spread them out over a month, more batching, more of that kind of thing. And when I was in Australia, I had a meeting with the management of the Ridges hotel system, where I actually got the opportunity to sit down for like 2 hours and talk with them about how are they looking at employees? How are they looking at employee productivity? How are they assessing an employee's value and productivity? Is it a day-to-day comparison, a week-to-week comparison? Of course, because that's how men measure things. But when we step back and look at it from month to month, you're going to see a completely different picture. And just the look on the faces of the people in the room, like, never even occurred to them. Never, like, just, oh, I never would have thought to look at it from a month to month perspective. That's it's quarterly, maybe, if you're lucky, but otherwise it's very micromanagement in today's world. And that's kind of the opposite of how most people who cycle do work and live. So that patriarchal, this way or the highway thing is not effective for anyone with a menstrual cycle to work in. And then you add on to that the hormonal imbalances caused by work or exacerbated by our work. Now you're going into work for, 3, 4, 5 days every month where you're not optimal. You're in pain under the desk with a heating pad, hoping nobody will come into your office, or
in there. Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
Like, I hear that so often from clients where they're like, I'm hiding in my office, or I'm hiding under my desk, or I'm hiding in the bathroom with a heat pack, taking Motrin and ibuprofen to the point that I probably have liver damage, trying to put a smile on my face and be happy when I'm really just like sobbing inside, mood swings, these kinds of things. And showing up to work is not going to make that better. Like, that's just going to make it worse. And of course, it compounds over time. And we wonder why we then enter perimenopause and we have such huge perimenopause and menopause reactions.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, it just goes on and on and on. And it makes me absolutely crazy. So getting women, especially into their own businesses, where they can run it with their cycles, where they're not having to work for somebody else, or if they are working for somebody else, they're a menstrually informed somebody else. Like, our back end of our business has a Slack with what phase are you in as our status is, not, what I'm in a meeting or I'm on a call or whatever the standard ones that Slack comes with. Ours are the phases of the cycle.
I love that. I love that. I mean, you mentioned Australia and meeting with people there. Do you feel like things are shifting? Is anything like this happening in smaller businesses, larger businesses, anything like that?
Yeah, huge. So there's a few countries that have instituted menstrual leaves, and there's some corporations that have done it as well. It's all an experiment right now. So that's just something I want to start with is, some, like, one company was trying to do something good where they were having like anyone who had their period put a red badge on, so that the idea was that you would treat that person a little more gently.
Right.
But of course, then the people wearing them are like, oh my God, so it's like
A little scarlet letter-ish.
Right. Yeah. So it's like they tried. Maybe they didn't think it all the way through, but at least they tried, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm in that place where at least they tried. There's some countries that are doing it as well. Spain was the most recent one who instituted it, and there is a caveat, like, you do have to have a doctor who says, this person has, endometriosis or adenomyosis or some kind of extreme issue that makes it difficult for them to work. but at least they're, and then they can have menstrual leave. So it doesn't affect their, vacation or sick leave because, of course we all have our same sick leaves and no one wants to spend their vacation in bed in pain. That's not really a vacation, but that's how people have to spend their vacation days right now. So it is nice to see some of those things changing. And then on a small business scale, I'm seeing it a lot more as more and more women owned, I will preface that, businesses are starting to work in those ways. So they're planning out things better so that everyone can work in the ways that best suit them. So they're saying, like, all right, we're going to do this launch down the line. My graphic artist, I need these in, 2 months or whatever it is, so that people can have more of that time to work when they're in their best phases for those particular tasks and bring them back. And I'm loving seeing that because then you see how much easier the business runs and how much less stress it is. My VA often will say something like, I really like working for you. You plan these things out. I can do them when I'm at my best rather than like the hair on fire businesses where everything is a last minute scramble and it doesn't matter whether, that's, my assistant has endometriosis as well as PCOS. So she has crazy periods. So sometimes she'll just be like, oh my God, can I just get back to you next week? And in my business, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in a, last minute hair on fire, it's not.
Yep.
So it, having like such seeing that visceral shift in the people that have worked with me and for me, saying, going like, oh my God, it's just like a relief to be over here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine what a difference that makes.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot here. I feel like it's good to hear though that you feel that things are shifting in the business environment. That's good to hear. I know we have a long way to go, and I feel as though for the skeptics listening, can we talk a little bit about that? Can we really learn to work in harmony or more in harmony with our cycles? And what about the women who are in these corporate high stress environments? Them too. Is it for all of us?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is they often talk about endometriosis as being like the masculine illness because a lot of people with endometriosis are type A, overachievers. And I mean, I had two majors within 4 years with a 3.5 plus grade point average to keep my scholarship, right? Like, obviously, I understand overachieving type A personality. I don't know where that comes from. No. So it's,
I can relate.
I get
Yes.
it, right? It's a lot of like lawyers and doctors and CEOs and C board people who end up with that diagnosis as well because of, I don't know why, but it does seem to go hand in hand. So it's interesting to me when I'm working with, especially an endo client, because they're almost always, they're like, well, I don't have any time. I can't do anything that you're telling me to do. I'm stressed out, and it kind of comes down to what's the quality of life that you want?
Right.
And can you actually take a break and rest, or can you not? And is that okay with you? And you do kind of have to take those moments where you go, okay, well, I need to make a choice on how I'm going to live my life forward. Can I still do this work and take care of myself and find a way through it? Or do I need to squirrel away money from this job and eventually work my way out of it into something else or into a different job completely, or a different company, whatever it is, making a move? So it can be a real upheaval for people in like those real high stress corporate jobs to make those kinds of decisions as to how they want their life to look and how they want it to be affected. And then, is your work your life?
Yes.
Or
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I mean, that's basically it. Or is your life for work? Like, how are you approaching it? So that to me is one of those things where you really have to sit back and just, what is the point of me being on this planet?
Yes, I was just going to say it's very existential. It's
Yeah.
basically what you have to do. You have to get there. I could not agree with you more. I mean, when I think about all of my clients over the years and myself as well, I worked in film production. I had a very high stress type of situation similar to you as well. And I had to make massive life decisions, and we make them in incremental steps, right? We're not, nobody's asking anybody to do this overnight, but I had to get out of that industry, train in this work. And that alone is a massive undertaking that can take multiple years. You might have to leave a relationship. You might have to move. I moved. There's just so many aspects to this. And so I appreciate you saying that, because I agree that you really have to start to reflect on your life and what it is you're doing. What are we even doing here? Which is a terrifying thing to even contemplate. But, we have to, if we're going to get to the heart of the problem, right? And, I really actually would love to start maybe at the beginning of the cycle, if you're open to it, talking about like the beginning of the cycle is menstruation, and just talking about what's happening physically and emotionally, and how we can begin to tailor our business or work schedule, because some of us own businesses, some of us work for other people, so how we can tailor all of that to meet our needs during this time.
Yeah, well, that menstrual phase actually is kind of the perfect phase to ask yourself those esoteric questions. So good call. Well
There you
done.
go. Okay, great.
Well, it is such a good. So I have this system, the what would Hermione do system.
Oh my gosh, Stasha, you kill me. I love it.
Yeah, because she's smart. Those boys would be dead without her. Let's be real.
That's so true.
So WWHD, and the best phase is the why phase. Like, why am I doing this work? Why am I doing this job? And sometimes it's, I just need to make ends meet. Well, then you don't need to do that job to make ends meet. There's other ways to get there, right? We talk about this all the time because my partner, film industry person, and they're always trying to drag him back, and he hates the hours and he hates the stress, and he teaches Tai Chi, for God's sakes. Like, he does not want to be there. So we probably every 6 months have this conversation where he's like, oh, I've got this offer. And it's like, do we need the money? It would be nice, but do we like need that level of stress for that amount of money? And it's always no. The answer is always no. So yeah, sometimes you have to have those esoteric questions, and the menstrual phase is a really good time to ask them. But it is a really good time to ask that why question. If you are running your own business, why are you running your own business? Why is this niche the niche that you've picked? Why is this topic the topic that you've picked? Why is who's your favorite client and why? Those kinds of just questions. And it's something that I encourage people to do, even when they're very loving and comfortable in their business, because the shiny object syndrome can really take you off your path drastically. And you end up 3 years down the line going, oh my God, what was I thinking? When in reality, you could just be right there on the path if you were doing these monthly menstrual check-ins. Yeah. So monthly menstrual check-in, why? Your hormones are at a low, everything's kind of at a baseline in general. I mean, I have endo, right? So day one is not the day that I do esoteric journaling. Day one is where I lay in bed, binge watch shows, and smoke a joint. Maybe day two or day three, I'll go into a little bit of the journaling and that kind of thing. So
I just have to say really quickly, I just love that you have given yourself permission to do this. And by saying it, you're giving other people permission too.
Oh yeah, no. Day one should really just be about relaxing and taking care of yourself and kicking back, do a facial, eat the food, drink the hot chocolate, whatever it is, but like enjoy yourself. It should be a treat. And even I know with period pain, it's not as nearly as much fun, but when we're giving ourselves that time and space, it does eventually get a little bit better. So, down the line. So it does make a huge difference. So give yourself that time and space. I don't do work. We have an autoresponder in my business that just says, I'm in my deep luteal or menstrual phase, and I'm taking care of myself, and I will get back to your emails when I'm in follicular. And if you don't have an autoresponder in your business like this, take it as a sign to put one in.
Awesome.
And then I don't have to worry about the emails, and then I don't have to think about it. And my assistant can answer them if she's around and she's on email duty, but a lot of times we're at the same part of our cycle at the same time. So it's just like everyone is off right now. We're just relaxed. So it just makes that stress go away where we don't have to worry about it and we can just do the things that we need to do. So for business, give yourself the break, block off the calendar. Your clients can schedule literally any other time. It's fine, but give yourself some break and some space. And if you are one of those people that actually has a great easy period, still give yourself some space. Maybe have like one client session available, but give yourself some space, give yourself that time. And I equate it to how every like dude bro CEO says that they have an hour every day where it's free time to just think and dream and invent, right? Like they all get like hippy dippy all of a sudden. And but that's like every day you take 2 hours to play pool because it helps you think, okay, well, every menstrual cycle on my menstrual phase, I'm going to take a couple of days off and just relax and let my brain wander and think. And the best ideas come in that moment. It's the shower time, right?
Yes.
Where you're in the shower doing something else and the download comes in because you're not. Yes. So if you give yourself that space and you let that phase just be open, great ideas, the perfect freebie, the most amazing, branding graphic, whatever, things just sort of download in that phase. So if you give yourself the space, your business will be so much more on track. You'll spend so much less money on shiny object things, and you will have such better ideas that are more congruent with what you're trying to do. So I really think the menstrual phase, as much as it's like not a productive phase, is the most important phase for your business.
It's productive in different ways.
Exactly.
Yes, that is so helpful. It's so good. It's such a departure, though, I think, from the current mindset of just having to push through. And it took me a really long time to put that on the calendar and actually honor the time that I really needed to be chilling out versus just pushing through and keeping going with the launch or whatever it was. And I also like what you said too about giving yourself a long runway with projects in your business just to account for all of the different phases and things that come up. So that's something else too that I think people who are listening might find useful for themselves and their businesses as well.
Yeah. Quarterly planning, like the year planning and the quarterly planning is essential. As much as like I was resistant to planning and I was all like, no, I'm never gonna have a schedule again. You can't make me. That planning is actually what gives you the freedom.
Yeah,
You get sick, you don't have to, cancel 1,000 things and make a mess of everything. You can just go be sick. You can take the week off and it's not a big deal. It's not going to break your business to get a cold or whatever, or a family emergency comes up. Like it's not going to break your business if you have a nice plan that's laid out for you.
absolutely.
It's just amazing that way. So don't resist the planning. And honestly, we all go into business with this idea of like, I'm going to have more time off. That's why I'm working for myself so that I can have time off. But then we don't take the time off because you're all like, no, I'm going to hashtag hustle bro culture my way through. And then 3 years down the line, I'll take a day off.
Yeah.
And
And we're just so burnt out. And it's just, yeah.
right.
I feel like the joke is you quit that 60-hour job working for someone else so you can work for yourself 80 hours a week instead, or something
100%.
along those lines. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want an excuse to take some time off, there is no better excuse than, oh, I have my period. I'm going to go take some time off. Like just schedule it in and you will be amazed. It's that thing where it's like, if you give yourself an hour to do the task, you'll get it done in an hour. If you give yourself a whole day to do that task, it will take the whole day to do the task.
Yep.
So if you give yourself time off, you'll still get everything done. You'll just get it done more efficiently. So you'll be more productive and you will not burn out and you will actually enjoy your life more.
I think that's a huge lesson, though, right? Is that we think that just pushing through is the more productive way of doing things, when in fact it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
That's exactly it. And that's actually going backwards in the menstrual cycle, but going to luteal phase. That's the biggest mistake I see people make is that they get towards the end. So what I call deep luteal, they get into that deep luteal a couple days before their period. And they're like, oh my God, I need to wrap things up. I need to push through. I need to finish these things. But in reality, 9 times out of 10, they're not right.
Yeah.
So then you go through your period and you come into your follicular phase, which is what I call the how phase. And it's really good at strategy and it's really good at figuring things out. And you're spending your follicular phase fixing what you broke in deep luteal and menstrual instead of building and moving forward.
So good. That's what I wanted to talk about next, the follicular phase. But I did want to add a caveat and say that I find in that deep luteal, when that happens to me, I'm inevitably I'm just frazzled and I feel out of my mind and things have to get done. And it's just it's a terrible thing to do to yourself.
It is.
So, yes. With that said, so moving into this follicular phase or the rest of the follicular phase, as we approach ovulation, can we talk about what changes are happening and then also what's best for us in this phase of for the work from a work perspective? Because you started,
Yeah.
and I would love to hear more of that.
Oh my God, absolutely. So it's really a great strategy phase. So as those hormones are rising, the estrogen and LHS and all these things, there's a study that came out recently about the changes in brain matter during the different phases of the cycle. And I've always said that the follicular phase is a great phase because you are more strategic. Things are happening quicker and faster. And the physical structure changes in the brain actually turns out that they line up with that same concept. Now, there's not a study that puts those two things together, but it does show that there is that change and it does increase thought speed, that kind of thing. And that follicular phase is such a good strategy phase. So it's the how phase. How am I going to accomplish this goal? How am I going to make it easier? How am I going to make it more fun? Those are kind of my favorite questions to ask in that phase. But it's that strategy phase. Like you're going to do a launch, the tech work. How am I going to get this messaging across? It's a very good verbal. So ovulation is when your verbal skills peak, but they're on the rise all through follicular. So it's a great time to look. It's a great time to, do the words, those kinds of things. And it's really helpful for strategy. So it's a really good time to lay out those plans and figure out exactly how you're going to accomplish it in the best way possible, and then start implementing and doing, which would be ovulation is what I usually call the do phase. So go get it done. And I like ovulation because there was that study that came out. We talked about this previously, that women in tipped positions make more in their ovulation phase.
I love that. I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
That
it was.
makes so much sense, though.
Yeah, right. So it's like the perfect time to go out and ask for what you want, make the sale, have your sales calls, do the webinar, ask for what you want, put it out there and just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how much it costs. This is what you get. And just be very like bold and brave and direct and go do the things, because they're very likely to succeed in that phase.
I love that. I love that so much. I mean, when you think about the physical piece too, right, where estradiol is making your hair look better, your skin is more glowing, you kind of have the testosterone boost of the confidence and just the boldness, like you said, and also that physical piece too, where you're like, I'm just looking so damn good.
Yeah, go do
So
your photo shoot in
right?
ovulation.
Yes. Go do your photo shoot and ovulation, of course. I know. Are there any other cool, fun things you should do during ovulation?
Well, record the videos. I love doing a good record the video session in ovulation. And I love doing the lives. So I often will hop on live in ovulation because it's just that testosterone boost, that confidence boost, that feeling really good is peak right then and there. So batching the video, batch doing photos, doing those kinds of fun things in that phase when you're really at that peak energy. Again, make the space for it, and you've got all of this amazing stuff that you can use for years down the line, right? Like every photo shoot that I've done years down the line, I'm still using photos from those because peak ovulation felt great, looked good, just nailed it. Like, boom, let's get it done. So it's the most plurific, I guess you could say, time. And then when you are moving into those lower energy phases of the cycle, that doesn't matter because you've got all this great content that you've made that now you can just distribute out over the course of the next month.
So perfect. Yeah. I love me some ovulation. What about for those of us who might struggle a little bit with ovulation? Because I hear this a lot from women in my community. They're having a hard time at ovulation time. They tend to get moodier and a little frustrated because they feel like they're supposed to be rocking it at ovulation. Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, I see this a lot too with my ADHD clients because
Mm,
the hormones and ADHD play off each other, and ovulation can be a bit more like a manic episode than
yes.
anything else. So, in that case, when you find that, like, I think one of the biggest hallmarks that I notice in business is tangents. A lot of ovulation tangents happen where it's like I was going to do this video, but then 3 hours later I was still talking and it was not about the what I was supposed to be talking about, or say like writing, that kind of thing. Also impulse buying. So ovulation is when we will impulse bigger ticket items.
Hmm.
So if you find yourself in ovulation signing up for bigger ticket items that are not necessarily like, oh, I went and splurged on a jacuzzi in ovulation. Oh, wait, but we really needed to fix the car. Like, that can also be a sign that the maybe ovulation is not the phase that you want to be doing those kinds of things in. So in that case, I really recommend just kind of treating ovulation like the menstrual phase, where you just let decision making necessarily doesn't have to happen. Impulse things don't necessarily have to happen. Is it on the plan? Then maybe give it a try. And if it's not on the plan, skip it. And then use the more stable, like early luteal phase where progesterone is rising, and it can kind of help counter effect some of those more tangential manic feelings that ovulation can bring. And I've also found this over the years that sometimes that early luteal phase is actually my best time to do recording, because I'm a little bit more, I need this to be clear, I need this to be concise, I want to get this wrapped up. So that kind of like tying up the loose ends instinct that we have in luteal, that kind of progesterone nesting, wanting to finish things up so that I can focus on the home, just sort of instinct kicks in. And sometimes that can be really helpful for content creation if ovulation feels a little too scattered, or you're moody, or you have the ovulation pain and you just want to lay down with like a castor oil pack and not do anything. In which case, sometimes early luteal or maybe even follicular are more of your like, get that content batched and put together. And then you can use it and take that time for ovulation to take care of yourself in whatever way you need to best.
Very, very helpful. Thank you. I know I was thinking about that with the estrogen rise and that big peak. That brings with it all of those neurotransmitters that are a little excitatory. And so I could see how with ADHD or, anything else really, how for anyone else who that could really be problematic. So just so anyone knows, if you're feeling a little PMSy at this time, that might be why. And I found though that gut health really plays a big role in this too. Like I've huge, right? Yeah, that's been a big one that when my clients work on that, they really tend to resolve a lot of the ovulatory issues that they've been experiencing, which is amazing. I don't know if you've noticed that too.
Oh yeah, gut health is where we start for everything.
Yes. Yeah, basically. Very true. I know.
Basically.
But good point. Okay, so then you touched on this a little bit. So ovulation is passing now, and we're going to that first half of the luteal phase, and then we get into the deep luteal, as you said, which is hilarious. I love that. And can we talk a little bit about physically what's going on, and then of course how we adapt our work and our business to suit us in the beginning of this luteal phase?
Yeah. So, like, as you were saying, that testosterone peak in ovulation ends and that confidence goes with it. And the first thing to know is that the day after ovulation, when you're like, what is wrong with me? I was so good yesterday, and today I am a mess. You're not a mess. Your testosterone dipped. That's all. It's take the blame off yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just that the testosterone came down a bit and you're not quite feeling the same level of confidence. And I find just letting that baggage goes, it makes a huge difference in how you feel entering into that luteal phase, because it's less like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? I rocked an 18-hour workday yesterday, and now today I'm, 2 hours in and I want to quit.
Yes.
All right.
Yep, been there.
Yeah, that's all right. That's how that feels. And unfortunately, we live in a system that's not adapted for that. But oh, you did 18 hours, then you should be able to do 19 today, is more of our culture. Whereas the reality is, oh, wow, nailed it. Now you can take a couple hours off for the next week because you did all of that extra. So it's just a different way of framing it and thinking about it. But that early luteal phase is actually quite a productive phase. Your progesterone helps with visuals, right? We talk about like pregnancy dreams a lot in things because the progesterone affects your dreaming. It's phenomenal. I think it makes your dreams more vivid and you remember them better. It's just a more visual phase. So our spatial awareness increases. So for me, the luteal phase is an absolute great time to look at things like, how is the flow of your web page? What are the graphics you're using? What are the things that you could be doing to make the background images more in alignment with your brand and what you're doing? It's a really great time to look at those visuals. Do you have bold words on your sales page? Do you have italicized words on your sales page? What's jumping to you? So you're really looking at things from that bigger picture of, does something stand out? Does the things I want emphasize? Do we have a graphic that draws the eye? It's those visual cues that are so important for running a business. And that luteal phase is perfect for looking into adapting, adjusting, and playing with graphics. And it's fun. Most of us have a kind of like, women just have a creative thing about them a lot. And oftentimes I find that when you give yourself that permission to have like a play in Canva in luteal, that it's just fun and you're getting things done and they look fantastic, and you come around the next phase and you're like, nope, I really like that. Like we're sticking with it. So it's a good time to give yourself the permission to do that kind of fun stuff and use that natural nesting instinct to wrap up some loose ends. Have I responded to all of the emails? Have I caught up on my inbox? Is there any outstanding messages on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever platform you're using that I need to respond to? Like wrapping up those loose ends, closing off those energy loops can be so confidence boosting when you're losing that testosterone confidence. So having that kind of ticking the things off the list, getting the dopamine hit in luteal feels really good. And then you're giving yourself that space so that when you do reach that kind of deep luteal phase where the progesterone is starting to drift back down, you have the freedom to go, oh, but I crossed everything off the list. There's an endless list, but I've crossed everything that really needs to get done today, in this month, in the next week, off the list. And so you can go into that deep luteal and menstrual phase with that space and relaxation, knowing that you'll be in early luteal to wrap everything up again in just a few weeks. It's not a big deal. It will be there next week. It's not a big deal. And you can actually enjoy yourself and do that. Like I love deep luteal to just batch cook, make the bone broth for the next month, make the pot of chili or stew or lentil soup or whatever it is for the, like do so I'm not at work, but I am preparing myself for the next month to have that 8-hour day or 18-hour day in ovulation, because I have batch cooked foods ready to go. So I don't have to think about cooking when I'm really in the zone working. And so you have that beautiful balance of I'm batch working and I've got all the support I need at home. And then I'm batch homing. I'm doing the mountain of laundry. I'm doing the cooking. I'm putting the stuff in the freezer so that when I come back around to work, I can just focus on it. And I don't have to worry about, do I have clean underwear?
Oh, yes. I feel like that is the ideal scenario for so many of us. And Yes, I've definitely had to really work at that about the whole thing that you just said about, yes, I've checked off all the things that need to get done. And yet I always feel like there's this never ending to-do list and I can never really do that and like fully relax. So I feel like that's really something for all of us to aim for.
It's not easy. I mean, you've had an entire lifetime of conditioning that there's always something more. There's consume more, create more. It's everything, especially in America, is more, bigger, better, faster, more expensive. Like, oh, you don't have a Stanley mug, right? Like that's all the rage right now.
It's crazy.
Who are you if you don't have this thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you, again, esoteric questions. Does it really make a difference? Is this really something that you want and need in your life?
Yep, those are the questions to be asking. I was thinking about that with the luteal phase. Like I always hear. I mean, it's crazy. Last week, I think I put something on Instagram about, yeah, what's going on in your luteal phase type of thing. The amount of women who were commenting, saying things along the lines of, I want a divorce. I totally just wonder about my whole life and all my decisions. And I, want to quit my job. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like they just want to blow up their lives. And I would love if you could speak to that a little bit because this
Yeah.
is almost epidemic now, is what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Well, you just hit one of my favorite topics, which is business PMS.
Oh, I love that. Is that a title in your book? I hope it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think even in The Revolution Will Be Bloody, I might have spoken on it a little bit. But yeah, business PMS is the same thing, right? Like you want to blow up your marriage, you want to blow up your business. You want to, like that person would be a better partner, that niche would be a better niche. I need to throw out all my clothes and start all over. I need to change all of my branding.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you can see some, and I love seeing this because like I'll be like in a Facebook group for women in business, and I'll see somebody be like, I think I could change my branding. And I'll just go, do you have a menstrual cycle? Yeah. Okay. When are you supposed to get your period? Next week? Yeah. See, what is business PMS?
That's
Please
so
don't
great.
blow up your business. In a week, you will probably be fine.
What are the responses that you usually get to something like that? It's
Oh my
amazing.
God. It's almost always just a flood of, oh my God, I had no idea. You're absolutely right. I do this every month. I never noticed that pattern before. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I have good friends that will occasionally be like, I think I'm going to change niche. Okay. Well, let's talk it through, but let's first find out what phase you're in and then let's talk it through.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's definitely luteal can be the place where we show up. I mean, it can be very helpful, right? Like um the dirty socks principle that I love to share, where your partner doesn't get their dirty socks into the bin, and so you're going to divorce your partner
Mhm.
or maybe murder them in their sleep for the dirty socks. It's an overreaction, but the reality is that it's a problem. You're not the maid, you're not their mother. So even if laundry is your responsibility of the chores in your relationship, your job isn't to pick them up off the floor. Your job is to take the hamper to the washer and do the laundry, not clean up after you. So sometimes they're illuminating. Sometimes making a niche change is the thing that you should do, but not then, not in that moment. That's a how phase question, right? So that's okay. So now I know what the problem is. I'm not thrilled with my niche. So then why? Go into the menstrual phase. Why am I not loving this niche? Now you might go, oh no, I do love this niche. Actually, I was just having some business PMS. But you might be like, oh, because I'm just so tired of people complaining about the same thing. Like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. Time for a niche switch, right? Great. How are you going to do that? And in follicular, you go through and you go, okay, how am I going to transition out of my niche into a new one? Can there be a transition phase? Do I need to cold quit right now and switch over? But like you can have that kind of how phase to figure it out and decide what you want to do. So rather than making that impulsive decision right there in what could be a business PMS or could be enlightening, you let those other phases of your cycle actually clarify it and problem solve in a way that makes it the best for you, for your clients, for your income, for what you need to happen smoothly, easily. And it can be a really beautiful transition versus I'm going to blow up my business and start over tomorrow.
That was so beautifully put, though. Thank you. Thank you for that. I just, again, feel like you laid out these easy to follow steps, a bit of a period blueprint for everyone who's listening. And I am so grateful. This was so enlightening. Thanks, Stasha. Wow. This was
Happy
so
to help.
good. Now I know, now I need to know where in your cycle you are.
I'm in follicular right now. I am
Yes.
day 6. So kind of with the endo, about day 5 is when I start to feel like a human being again, and the brain fog kind of starts to lift. And day 5, day 6 is when I'm back into the saddle and excited about life. So
Yep. It's very relatable for so many of us. I had a feeling you were in your follicular phase because you're totally on fire. It's amazing. And of course, you wouldn't have scheduled this interview if you were on
yeah,
day 1 or day 29 or whatever.
you'd have gotten an email that was like, I'm sorry, I'm day 1. I cannot do this.
Exactly, which I would 100% have appreciated because I totally get it. I also only do interviews in the follicular phase. That's the only way I can
Yeah.
actually string a sentence together. So again, thank you though so much. This was amazing. Is there anything, final words that you would like to share with my audience before we wrap things up?
Don't let the shoulds in your head rule what you do. You should be is probably a patriarchal nonsense. You should be pushing harder. You should be working harder. You should be doing something productive right now. Don't let the shoulds run the show. Tap in. What phase are you in? What does it feel like? What do you need? Let that lead. And it's hard and it takes a long time and it probably never ends. I haven't gotten to the end of the shoulds. The shoulds still appear in my brain from time to time. And I've been doing this for over a decade. So take your time. Thank you, shoulds. I understand what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to help me keep safe in the patriarchal world that we live in. But instead, I'm going to stick with my own body and my own rhythms and go from there.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great. And I would love for you to just share where everyone can find your amazing work and your book and other book coming.
Absolutely. So I'm at Stasha Washburn on Instagram and Facebook, and on TikTok, I am the Stasha.theperiodcoach. And you can go to periodcoachingschool.com, which has the information on coaching, and the business book will be available. There's a wait list / when it's published, it will turn into a magical buy now link. And the periodcoach.com, my original site, is where the revolution will be bloody, and the bloody brilliant business will live over there as well. So the periodcoach.com has kind of more like the personal works on it.
Amazing. Great. Thank you again, Stasha. This was so good. I appreciate you so much. And I'm so happy that we're all doing this work in the world together. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap. Be sure to click that subscribe button to join me for more Girl Talk Gone Menstrual in upcoming episodes. But in the meantime, check out my latest Period Party episode. And if you're looking for a deeper dive into your hormones, go ahead and take my period quiz at NicoleJardim.com/quiz.